Dear students, good morning to all of you. I welcome you to the online class being hosted by Directorate of Distance Education, Maulana Azad National Urdu University. In this class, we are going to talk about Maulana Azad studies paper. If you remember, we started discussing about the life and different personality shades of Maulana Azad in the previous class. Just to recall what we have dealt with in a brief possible way, we'll quickly try to look at Maulana Azad's personality. For those who missed our yesterday's class, then we'll move on to works of Maulana Azad. Maulana Abul Kalam Azad was an illustrious scholar, theologian, political leader, freedom fighter, poet, writer, and journalist who attained great heights due to his untiring efforts for the freedom movement and for his contribution in mobilizing the people to fight for their motherland. In fact, he was a man of integrity and upheld moral values all through his life. In his teen years, he wrote many poems, articles, and essays on religion and philosophy. And later on, he wrote for political purposes and openly criticized the then British rule in India. He lived the time of Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, and he was friend of both Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. He was greatly impressed by Gandhiji's doctrine of non-violence during the freedom movement. He also actively participated in the Khilafat movement, non-cooperation movement, and the Quit India movement. For his activities against the then British government, he was put into prison along with other leaders of the Congress by the British government. However, it did not desist him from his mission and goal to strive for the liberation of the nation from the imperial clutches of the British rule in India. Students, we dealt with different sides of Maulana Azad's multifaceted personality in detail in the previous class. But I would like you to know in a very quick way what we discussed in the previous class. Maulana Azad was born on 11th November 1888 in Mecca in the holy city of Saudi Arabia. His name was Abul Kalam Ghulam Muhyiddin Ahmad, and Azad was his pen name. He was married to Zulaikha Begum. His mother was an Arab Muslim, while his father, Maulana Khairuddin, was a Muslim of Afghan origin. Maulana Azad did not receive any formal institutional education. Despite that, he was well versed in Hindi, Arabic, Persian, and a lot many other disciplines. He was a prolific scholar who wrote many works and interpreted the Quran, Hadith, and Fiqh. In today's class, we will definitely look at major works of Maulana Azad and the impact these works have on our society. He had a political bent of mind. He started participating in political activities right from his teenage. He visited many countries such as Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Turkey. He also met Sri Aurobindo Ghosh and Sri Shyam Sundar Chakravarti, and then joined the nationalist movement against the British rule in India. In 1912, Maulana Azad started Urdu Weekly under the name Al Hilal, which was used to expose and attack the British imperialism and colonialism in India. It used to highlight the misdeeds and cruelties of the British in India. This paper was deemed anti-state propaganda by the British government, and therefore it was banned in 1914. But the spirited, the dedicated and committed Maulana Azad restarted his efforts by launching another paper, Al-Balagh, in 1950. This paper continues to foster the patriotism among Indians, and it also tried to bridge the gap between Hindus and Muslims. Maulana Azad knew that the rival or the enemy which the Indians are fighting is a complete system, the British. So therefore, he realized that it is important for Indians to join forces, to come together with their unique religious, cultural identities, and join forces to fight the British. And that is why he tried to bridge the gap between Hindus and Muslims. As British also perceived this paper as being anti-government, so this paper was also banned by the British government. And this time Maulana Azad was expelled from Kolkata and sent to Ranchi. He was detained and released only after the World War 1920. And as a leader, Maulana Azad immensely contributed to Indian politics, especially between 1920s and 1940s and later. He was elected as youngest president of the Indian National Congress, and in his capacity as the president, he participated in various negotiations with the British government for the establishment of the independent rule in India. He spoke to the Cripps mission. He spoke to the cabinet mission sent by the British government, and he consulted, and he was consulted by Gandhiji, Jawaharlal Nehru, and many other leaders of the Congress on a variety of important issues. That shows how significant his role was as a political leader in the Indian politics. And in fact, he was part of the Constituent Assembly, which later drafted the Indian Constitution, the most important document that became the hope of millions of people of India. In fact, his stature was so high and his contribution to the society was so great that he was also part of Khilafat movement, and he was elected as the president of All India Khilafat Committee. And then post-partition, Maulana Azad was given the important portfolio of education. The then leadership in the government and the Congress knew that Maulana Azad was the most competent person to lay out the infrastructure of education in the country. And that is why he was given the Ministry of Education. And through that portfolio, he tried not only to promote better education and infrastructure in the country, but also peace and harmony. And he was focused on integrating religious education with the secular education. Maulana Azad gave a landmark speech, a memorable speech at the inauguration of Madrasa Aliyah, which shows his mindset when it comes to education and his patriotism. He invited Mahatma Gandhiji to inaugurate Madrasa Aliyah in 1920. And at that time, he tried to convince students who were studying in other madrasas run by the British government and motivate them and inspire them to come and join Indian education system, like one that is Madrasa Alia in Calcutta and the other madrasa in Ranchi. He wooed many students from the basically from Calcutta madrasa, that is Madrasa Alia, and he was aware that when compared to government institutions, the local Indian educations institutions like Vidyapeeths and madrasas would not be able to offer as much facilities as a government sponsored institution can do. But he made them, the students, believe that education is not for securing a job alone, for earning a livelihood alone. Education is actually a noble activity of acquiring values and learning, and for that any sacrifice may have to be made. With this idea in mind, Maulana Azad went about many parts of the India and persuaded students studying in British sponsored institutions to boycott their classes and join the Indian system of learning. Now, when it comes to writer, Maulana Azad as a writer, he produced a lot many works. Of those works, some notable are Tazkira, Gubar Khatir, Abul Kalam ki Kahani, Khud Unki Zubani, and India Wins Freedom. Today we are going to look into these works in some details for understanding these texts and also from the examination point of view. We know that these works are considered by many critics as semi-autobiographical in nature, and it provides information about Maulana Azad and his personal life as well. Maulana Azad started very early at the age of 16, and he began editing Lisanus Sidq, a magazine that promoted social reform and Urdu language and culture. And then he also wrote Tarjuman al-Quran, the translation and commentary of the Holy Quran. Besides that, he wrote a book titled Tazkira on the insistence of his friend Fazluddin Ahmad, and this book is about Maulana Azad and his roots, his forefathers. And another one, Gubar Khatir, is actually a collection of letters which he wrote when he was imprisoned in Ahmednagar Fort. And these letters are mostly addressed to his dear friend Nawab Habibur Rahman Khan Sherwani. And the last important work from Azad, Maulana Azad, was India Wins Freedom, which was published after his death in 1959. And this book is dedicated to his personal secretary, Humayun Kabir, who also helped to translate this work into English. So, in today's lecture, as I told you in the very beginning, we'll be looking at different works of Maulana Azad, especially from examination point of view. The first text that we are going to take up, and which is part of your course in MA English first semester, is Hall Faisal. I hope the slides that I am moving are also visible to you. Could you please quickly confirm if the slides are moving? Okay, thank you so much. So yeah, the first text that we are going to deal with today is Hall Faisal. Now, Hall Faisal can be translated or is often translated as the final verdict or the last word. So before we understand the content and the subject matter of this interesting write-up by Maulana Azad, we need to look at the context in which this was produced. We know that Maulana Azad was expelled from Kolkata and sent to Ranchi as part of a punishment after banning Al-Bala by the government, the British government. So when he came out, right, he started his nationalist activities. Okay. So in one of the, is there any problem with my voice? Is it loud enough? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. So we know that after Maulana Azad came out of confinement from Ranchi, he started his nationalist activities. So in one of his public speech, he said something which the British government did not like. So as a result, a case was registered against him. And as part of the trial, he was given a chance to put his version of defense. So instead of appearing personally before the presidency magistrate in Calcutta court, he chose to write it. And that written version of his response to the court is what we read in this course as Hall Faisal. Now, the purpose of selecting this piece is to give the essence of Maulana Azad's nationalist thought process. A detailed reading of this selection gives readers an opportunity to understand the history of the times as well, in which Maulana Azad lived. Now, before we delve into the subject of Hall Faisal, we need to keep two factors in mind. The first one is Maulana Azad was presenting his arguments in the presence of the magistrate who was presiding over his hearing in the case related to Maulana Azad's so-called incitement of masses and for his support of Khilafat movement. As such, Maulana Azad's language is formal and quite polite, though full of suppressed indignation. Because it was a written document, because it is coming from a nationalist figure of Indian National Congress, the language was very polite and formal. Yet, Maulana Azad did not lose the opportunity to convey his thoughts and his opinion about the matters he deemed fit. He called a spade even in a written document to the court. We know that court documents are serious in nature, and every word we choose, every sentence we write, for that we would become responsible. Yet, Maulana Azad found this an opportunity to show mirror to the British government for the injustices that the government is committing against the common Indians. Second, the writer is conscious of a set of audience for his speech. The fact that this written document is meant for the court, at the same time, Maulana Azad was aware that this document may be and perhaps should be read by his fellow Indians. So keeping that in mind, with that clarity in mind, he drafted this Hawle Faisal as a response to the court. And this is the reason why he chose to write and publish it rather than giving an oral testimony before the magistrate. Now, the British government has always justified its action by saying that it was implementing reforms for the welfare of Indians. We know that the revolt or the struggle for independence already started in 1857, and the momentum heightened post World War I. And in 1920s, the struggle gradually turned into a mass movement. Now, considering the resistance from the locals, from native Indians, and their will to get rid of a foreign rule was something sensed by the British and the British administrators. They were aware that this fire of a struggle for freedom cannot be extinguished. So they came up with a lot of pretext and logics to defer it, to delay it. So one of the logic that the government promoted to delay the independence and freedom of India is the logic that the British government is working on and implementing reforms for the welfare of Indians. It was continually extending the time frame for total handover and self-rule in the name of welfare measures for India. Now, this is something they can fool some people with, but not a well-aware nationalist leader like Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. According to Maulana Azad, this logic is nothing but a well-known deception. Now, calling this measure or this viewpoint of the British and this logic of the British as a well-known deception in a written document to be submitted to the magistrate requires a lot of courage, and that is what Maulana Azad has displayed. It is this what we calling a spade a spade. He believed that all the claims of these British administrators and rulers were but empty excuses to delay and defer the freedom and independence of the country. He strongly believed that freedom cannot be granted in bits and pieces. The freedom of a country cannot be granted in bits and pieces. At once, it must be given. Maulana Azad also believed that freedom from the unwanted presence of a foreign rule should not be gradual but complete and in one go. This indicates that Maulana Azad was speaking in the concept of Purna Swaraj, that is complete autonomy. Therefore, the statement also served as a message to his fellow men. Now, it is not only meant for the magistrate and for the trial that was going on, but it is also for the masses to understand the mindset of the British and how it is playing with the lives of the people of India by not granting freedom at once. At the same time, he wanted to make his Muslim brothers understand that the struggle for freedom from foreign rule was directly in accordance with the teachings of Islam. We all know that Islam is against slavery of any kind, that the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, has abolished slavery. As such, any human being had a right to withdraw support from a system of governance which robbed the citizens of their birthright, that is freedom. Here we understand that Maulana Azad was directly addressing the people of his community who shared the same ideology, that is the ideology of Islam, and using Islam as a common ground, he is urging his fellow Muslims to speak up against the slavery and strive for freedom. He told the Muslims of India that striving to free the motherland was the religious duty of every Indian. Now see how, as a leader with a vision, a clear vision, and a well-defined goal, he is able to communicate with the right set of audience, and through logic and through subject matter common to the addresser and the addressees, is able to convince them to join the cause of freeing the country from a foreign rule which does not give freedom to its subject. Since the notion of non-cooperation, non-violence were so compatible to one another that even Gandhiji thought it fit to launch the national movement of non-cooperation alongside the Khilafat movement. We know that 1920s to 40s was a time period wherein multiple forms of agitations took place. Multiple smaller movements sprung up. Among them was non-cooperation and Khilafat, two prominent ones. Now after Khalif Faisal, now it is time to move to Ghubar-e-Khatir. I hope you understood the gist of Khalif Faisal. Could you quickly respond? I request you to, thank you so much. Now we'll take up the second text because we have some more text in line. So considering the time constraint, I'll try to move on to the next one. Now Ghubar-e-Khatir, we know that it is a collection of letters, and it is a testimony to Maulana Azad's literary prowess. In the previous class, when we were talking about Maulana Azad as a writer, we not only came to know that he was a polyglot, meaning he had mastery over Urdu, Persian, Arabic, English, right, Hindi, but also on variety of knowledges, streams of knowledges. And at the same time, he was a terrific speaker, a fearing speaker, and a prolific writer. So his thoughts, his ideas, and his vision and goal to free the country from foreign rule, all these things and his other interests have manifested in his writings. So one cannot completely understand Maulana Azad by neglecting his literary contributions. So Ghubar-e-Khatir is a different kind of text among all of his texts. This is a collection of 24 letters, a majority of which he wrote when he was imprisoned or put behind bars in the Ahmednagar fort. The British government in the early 1940s realized that Congress leaders, especially who were at the forefront of agitation or resistance against the British government, have become too much of a headache. So the government sent a few Congress leaders, including Maulana Azad, Mahatma Gandhi ji, Jawaharlal Nehru, and others, to Ahmednagar fort and confined them there for multiple years. It was this time that Maulana Azad, as well as Jawaharlal Nehru and perhaps some other leaders, have utilized to write down on variety of subjects. So at this time, Maulana Azad produced a collection of letters named Ghubar-e-Khatir, and it was the same time Jawaharlal Nehru came up with Discovery of India, his very popular book. Now, out of these 24 letters, 20 were written by Maulana Azad when he was in Ahmednagar fort. But one letter was written a few days prior to his arrest, and the rest of the 3 were added later by Muhammad Ajmal Khan, Maulana Azad's secretary. And these 2 letters were written, 3 letters were written when Maulana Azad was in Shimla and Kashmir. Now, if we try to see if there is any connection between these 24 letters, that they have been brought together and published as Ghubar-e-Khatir, and we come to know that not only that majority of these were written in Ahmednagar fort, but also these letters were written to one particular gentleman, was addressed to one particular gentleman, whom Maulana Azad refers to in the letters as Siddiq Mukarram or Muhtaram, who is none other than Nawab Habibur Rahman Khan Sherwani, the Rais of Bikampur, Aligarh. Let me tell you one interesting fact, that though Maulana Azad had a lot of friends in his political circle, and we later come to know when we read India Means Freedom that the very book was dedicated to his dear friend Jawaharlal Nehru. But apart from his political friends, these letters reveal that Maulana Azad also had one unique friend with whom he never discussed politics. It's all language, culture. at a very personal level. Now, these letters reveal a literary mind and a sensitive soul who desires to be in the company of his friend. Here, nothing but Nawab Sherwani, who shares intellectual compatibility and can be a witness to his feelings, emotions, likes, and dislikes. It is not that only Maulana Azad used to write letters to him. He used to get responses as well and personal letters from Nawab Sherwani. So they used to exchange letters. As I told you, but one interesting aspect of these letters is that it never talked about or brought politics into the conversation. It's purely about the feelings, emotions, thoughts, likes, dislikes. Maulana Azad deliberately kept the matters of politics totally away from those friends and acquaintances who were his friends purely in the realm of literature and culture. Now, Humayun Khatri records his keen and detailed observations about his surroundings, about Ahmednagar Fort where he was confined, habits and sounds of birds, about music, and in fact, it also gives detailed account of tea, something we consider trivial, insignificant. But Maulana Azad writes lines after lines, pages after pages about tea, its various types, different techniques of brewing it, and minute details regarding drinking the tea. So overall, Humayun Khatri brings out his observations from Ahmednagar Fort. And it is not only about the surroundings, the flora and fauna, but also about people, his fellow prisoners, who were none other than the nationalist figures of that time. And the book also deals with philosophical issues like existence of God, religion, morality, and ethics, and worldly existence. It is indeed a creative work of art written in the epistolary style. It shows the great command of Maulana Azad over literary genres and over language and literary devices. If you happen to read any of the letter or Humayun Khatri, you would realize that the very first routine of Maulana Azad in the prison was to get up very early, perhaps around 3:30, and we usually term it as the time of Tahajjud. And then, immediately after freshing up, he would make a cup of tea for himself. And he was fond of jasmine flavor. His day starts with a cup of tea. And then he would write. And that is how he spent many, many years in the prison. And some of the letters in Humayun Khatri almost read like stories, such as The Crow and the Bulbul. And this is a text prescribed in your course. And we will be talking about that as the next point of discussion. The Crow and the Bulbul is a a narrative piece from Mubarak Khatir. And the whole letters were written in Ahmednagar fort. So therefore, the setting of this story is also the prison. In Ahmednagar fort, Maulana Azad, along with other freedom fighters, were imprisoned from 1942 to 1945. This narrative has many themes. The author maps out the premises for the readers who get a clear impression of the layout, which presents cells, a courtyard, and a huge neem tree, and an imposing ancient fort building with high rooftops. There is a detailed discussion on the flora and fauna which inhabited this prison. The narrative of Maulana Azad reflects his sense of beauty, his attachment to nature, his knowledge of the flora, and his ability to keenly observe minute details around him. One fine morning, Maulana Azad is distracted by the actions of Sayyid Mahmud, a fellow activist and prisoner in Ahmednagar fort. In the story, Maulana Azad presents the character of Sayyid Mahmud in a caricature style, reminding us of the one employed by the English essayist Charles Lamb and the great Indian storyteller R.K. Narayan. When it comes to the characterization in a literary work, Maulana Azad is on par with any reputed creative writer. The examples that we have given is of English literary figures, but Maulana Azad was writing in Urdu. The technique, the richness of the character and characterization could be compared with Charles Lamb and R.K. Narayan. Maulana Azad is not only to be appreciated for his wit and humor, but also for the graphic manner in which he makes Ahmednagar fort premises come alive for the readers. If one reads the story and his work, one realizes that there is a great sense of humor and wit that Maulana Azad had, and which time and again appears in his writings. So there are multiple birds and animals that Maulana Azad describes in the story, The Crow and the Bulbul. The mynas are given the appellation of gazelles based on the grace of their flight. I am trying to quickly bring few snippets from the story. Myna are compared to gazelles for their grace of their flight. The crows are described on the basis of their cacophony and their persistent attempts to grab food as and when they can. And the peculiar body language and the hurried movements that are so characteristic of the squirrels have been described in an interesting, humorous manner by Maulana Azad. When the squirrels clambered down from the neem tree excitedly at the sight of food, Maulana Azad says, they resembled hordes of hungry pilgrims who were eager for a free meal. The squirrels stuffed their mouths with breadcrumbs left over after the crows had eaten. The way the squirrels sat on their haunches, with a little pause at the mouth, with their heads jerking constantly and eyes darting, is a sight that is given a very fine description and interpretation by Maulana Azad. He says, it looked as though the squirrels were appreciating the generosity of Sayyid Mahmud Sahib. As for the crows and their persistent cawing, Maulana Azad can only describe it as unholy din, that is, unholy noise. Now, after this, we shall move to an important text, that is India Wins Freedom. Now, India Wins Freedom was published posthumously. Maulana Azad died in 1958, and this book, with the assistance of Humayun Kabir, came out in 1959. It is a personal account of Maulana Azad detailing his experiences and perspectives as a leading figure in the Indian independence movement. It deals with the period of 1930s and 40s, and it sheds light on the process of transfer of power from the British to Indian hands. India Wins Freedom traces the events that took place and ultimately led to the partition in a frank and profound manner. The book also points out that politics was responsible for the partition. Even though Maulana Azad tried his very best right from the beginning to bridge the Hindu-Muslim gap, he reveals in this book that more than the religion, it was the politics that was responsible for the partition of the country on the religious lines. The book also touches upon contemporaries of the authors like Jawaharlal Nehru, Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, Vallabhbhai Patel, and many others, and highlights their mindsets during that time. If we quickly categorize important aspects of the book, then perhaps we can go this way. Early life and background. Maulana Azad discusses his early life, education, and how he was drawn into Indian freedom struggle, emphasizing his commitment to both Indian independence and Hindu-Muslim unity. And one part of the book talks about his role in Congress. Maulana Azad became a prominent leader in the Indian National Congress, advocating for non-violent resistance and cooperation among India's diverse communities to achieve independence. We know that he stood shoulder by shoulder with Mahatma Gandhi ji in the struggle for independence, non-cooperation, civil disobedience, Quit India movement, and many such instances. And the whole life of Maulana Azad, a portion of which reflects in India Wins Freedom, is a testimony to the fact that Maulana Azad was a staunch, opposite to partition. A significant portion of the book is dedicated to Maulana Azad's opposition to the partition of India. He provides insights into the negotiations and internal conflicts within the Congress and between different political leaders, including his disagreements with the partition plan. As a leader, between 20s and 40s, Maulana Azad had the opportunity to interact with a variety of leaders. And in this book, Maulana Azad offers personal observations and interactions with major figures of the independence movement, including Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, and even Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He provides detailed accounts of their personalities, leadership styles, and their roles in the freedom struggle. He also highlights about the rise of communal tensions leading up to independence and partition. Maulana Azad reflects on his efforts and those of others to promote Hindu-Muslim unity and to prevent communal violence. Somehow, the British government and some people within the nationalist movement could not come up with a better alternative to stop the partition of the country on religious lines. Maulana Azad also, as leader of the Congress, between 20s and 40s, had the opportunity to interact with and represent the Congress and the will of the people before different missions sent by the British government. There were two notable missions mentioned in the book. Sir Stafford Cripps mission, which came first, and then the cabinet mission, which was sent by the British Parliament. Azad gives a detailed account of the plan of cabinet mission of 1945 and 46, its proposal for India's political future, and why it ultimately failed, leading to partition. He shares his views on how different decisions might have prevented the division. Azad reflects on the movement of India's independence and the accompanying tragedy of partition. We know that the partition of the country into Pakistan and India resulted in a great tragedy of violence, bloodbath. And he expresses his sorrow over the violence and displacement that followed, considering it a personal and national tragedy. At the same time, in the book, throughout, Maulana Azad shares his philosophical views on freedom, justice, and secularism. He emphasizes the importance of education, national unity, and inclusive governance in building a new India. In the concluding sections, Maulana Azad discusses his vision for independent India, including the importance of maintaining democratic values, protecting minority rights, and ensuring India's progress on the global stage. With this, I have tried to summarize India Wins Freedom, and overall, we have tried to look at all facets and understand its context and important elements. Then we have looked at Mubarak Khatir. We also have, in a brief possible way, summarize India Wins Freedom. And now, I think it is time to take up some questions from your end. So, for that, I now open the floor for questions and answers.